Hi, everyone. Welcome to my Brand Chat interview series. I couldn't be more excited to introduce you to Marty Neumeier, who is the Director of Transformation at Liquid Agency and the Godfather of Branding. Welcome to the show, Marty.
Thank you, Kelly. Good to be here.
Well, I'm not the only one who's excited. I have my students, my viewers, and my listeners who will be tuning in to watch this, and you have been the person people have been most excited about. And so I couldn't be more excited to have you here and to have you share a few golden nuggets of your wisdom with my troop. So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Happy to help. Hi, students.
The first thing, though, that I wanted to have you do for us, if you wouldn't mind, is I would love for you to share your story, particularly how you started and then also how you wound up here just as basically the Yoda of branding. And I really, because not everybody has their finger on the pulse of branding like you and me, and they may not know sort of the inner workings of you and who you are and how you show up in the world. But I think it's very relevant that they get to know you because you are an authority on this subject. So would you care to share a little bit?
Sure. A lot of people I know who got into branding came from all different, directions. You could be a business guy, an MBA or something, get into it that way. You can be a strategist, you can be a copywriter, there's lots of ways. It's a new kind of field of knowledge, so there's many ways to get there. I happen to get there through being a graphic designer. So started out as a graphic designer. I went to Art Center in Los Angeles when I was 19 and dropped out, became a designer, kind of figured it out on my own and learned how to write copy a little bit because I was in an area where there weren't any copywriters. I had to learn that too to be a designer because you can't be a graphic designer without words. A lot of graphic designers that don't realize that that's only half of the equation when you're communicating visually. You have to have words and pictures. So I learned how to do that after a fashion and just kept learning how to write. So that helped me a lot. So I did that for a while in a small town, and it wasn't making that much money, but I was learning a lot. It was a nice, safe space for me to be in. No danger of, embarrassing myself on the national stage. But I couldn't make enough money, so I moved to Silicon Valley when that was just getting going. And that was quite an eye-opener. So I was hanging around with all kinds of really inventive people. I mean, not in a graphic design sense, but in, technology and all kinds of engineering, all kinds of stuff. And I decided I would focus on that I would be the first graphic designer only to help people in technology. There was nobody that wanted to do that, if you can believe it. Nobody. There were people doing it, but that wasn't their goal. It was just a way to make money. Because in Silicon Valley, that's what you have. And if you're a graphic designer, you get technology clients. But everyone wanted to be, designer for a museum or something, designing posters and fun things like that. But I said, I just want to do this technology thing. I know nothing about it. I'm not technical at all. So it was quite a challenge for me to fake my way through this in the beginning. But, eventually I got comfortable with it. So I did that. Started getting really important new clients like Apple and Adobe, Sun Microsystems, Microsoft, companies like that. And about 15 years ago, I just started to think, I want to do something else. So I started a magazine on graphic design. I decided to sort of share what I've learned about graphic design because now I could design and I can write. So that's what you do in a magazine. So I started a magazine on design, and that was really hard. That was like so much work, and I wanted it to be very good. And I think it was, but it was just hard to get an audience. What I learned was graphic designers really don't like to read. And that's probably why they're graphic designers to begin with. But, I got a few thousand of them, and it was enough to kind of limp along. And after 5 years, I just couldn't do it anymore. It was costing millions a year, not making millions. So I closed it down and had to reinvent myself. This is probably my third or fourth reinvention. And I thought, well, here I am trying to sell this idea of branding to graphic designers who don't really like the idea of business that much. They really want to design stuff. They want to be artists. But I have this problem that designers are on one side of the dance floor and business people are on the other, and they're just not dancing, and so I need to get them together. And I couldn't get the designers to go over and talk business. So I thought, well, I just did it the wrong way. Like something I've done many times in my life is do exactly the wrong thing. So I decided, no, I'm going to talk to business people and bring them over to design. I'm going to teach them enough about design where they appreciate it. They're willing to pay for it. We designers can have a seat at the table and make some good money, all that. And that worked. So I started a company called Neutron. And my first act in the company was to write a book called The Brand Gap, which talks about that gap between, there it is, my first book. So it's all about the gap between strategy or business and design. And that gap still exists, but it's closing a little bit more. It's getting closer. But that's what I've been trying to do since that book, is bring those two sides together. So where those two things come together is branding. That's where you have business strategy and all kinds of design, all kinds of invention and design and so forth. That overlapping area is branding. So that's how I came to it, kind of out of necessity, kind of like you were saying before you started the interview, which is, it's amazing how many clients don't really understand marketing or branding at all, or strategy, and so they need help. And so I was able to bring a certain kind of knowledge to those people, and I've been doing that for 15 years now. It shows no sign of letting up. I mean, there's still companies and people that need to learn how to do this. So that's how I got there.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love what you do. And I love you. And I love the fact that you gave it voice, because as we were chatting before we started the interview, is that part of the frustration I live every day is to try and educate entrepreneurs and early stage businesses on the importance of branding and positioning. The fact that not everybody is really, really gifted in sales. And if you can't sell off a napkin, then what? Right?
Yeah.
And we're not scalable. We can't have one-on-one interaction all the time. So you need other tools that are communicating and leaving an impression about you when you're not even in the room.
Well, selling is necessary almost always. But I think the goal of branding, this is the ideal goal. It's impossible. It's sort of like trying to, understand infinity or something. The real goal is to make selling obsolete. I mean, it's sort of saying, look, we don't have to sell our product. We just need to show it to you in a way that, that we need to contextualize it for you so you know how it's going to help you in your life, and you'll want to buy it. We don't have to sell you on it, right?
Right.
So that's the goal. And of course, you always fall short, and that's where selling picks up the slack generally. But people do need to be told about features, and they need to be shown things. So if you want to call that selling, fine. But as far as persuading people or twisting arms or exaggerating or hyping something, let's try to put that out of the picture with branding. We try to be really honest, because branding is about a long-term relationship with customers. And if you lie to them or exaggerate your promises and then don't come through, that's not branding. That's unbranding. You're killing your So that's what branding is about. It's a long-term strategic type of communication, and it runs really deep. It's not just communications. It's the product itself. It's the culture of the company. It's all these things together.
Well, and I use your books, your series of books as resources. And in brand school, there is a resource section where this video will live, where I actually recommend a couple of books. I'm going to show a couple of them today, 3 by you and 1 by another. But I'm very selective on books that I'll recommend because I feel as though they are a bit subjective. But the 3 that I basically utilize all the time are these.
Of mine, yeah, those are the core branding books right there.
Yes, and they are in brand school as a resource for people, and in threaded throughout, you really paint a solid picture of the importance and the value of branding. And one of the things that I always share when I speak publicly in front of groups on branding is the phrase that you coined, which is, a brand is not what you say it is, it's what they say it is.
That's it. Actually, that was said by one of my colleagues after she read the first draft of the Brand Gap. She said, "Oh, I see. It's not what you say it is, it's what they say it is." Right. And so that became mine, but really it was Nancy Bernard who said that, who's a brilliant person, of really perspicacious person. I always enjoyed having her around, and she said a few things like that. Mm-hmm. My second book, Zag, I didn't say when everybody zigzagged. Somebody else, one of my clients, said that based on something I had said about zagging. And he said, "Oh, so when everybody zigs, you zag." And that became Zag, the book. So it's great to have friends and to mirror what you're saying so you know who you are and what you're saying.
Well, and I think that it's really one of the most profound things to help articulate or help others visualize the impact of branding. Because there is truth to that. I mean, you can say it, but if they don't believe it.
No, it's all about the effect. It's not about checking boxes. Well, I'm branding. I did all these things. I made a logo. We did an ad campaign. We have a product. We're branding, aren't we? Well, yes, I suppose. But if you don't know what the effect is, what good are you? I mean, it's really all about seeing what's happening, and then altering your action to make it better. And so until your branding efforts hit an audience, you really don't know what you're doing. You have to try something, experiment, see how it works, adjust, and do that. And so if you're not looking at it from the audience's point of view, you're not really branding. You're just checking boxes.
I love it. The other book that I recommend is this one.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
And you're all over this book.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like really good for like looking at all the tools you have, Mm-hmm. So it's kind of an encyclopedia of tools and ideas.
And you're quoted in there as saying, "Brand will become the most powerful strategic tool since the spreadsheet." Do you still believe that?
Yeah, I do. So the reason I said that is because I started thinking about branding in ways that I could explain to a CEO. Because, for a long time, CEOs say, well, branding, that's something that the marketing director does. And I say, no. If you leave it to the marketing director, it's going to be like a subcategory of marketing. No, it's the other way around. Marketing is a subcategory. Everything's a subcategory of branding except for running the company. So really, think of it like a double helix. You've got these two strands, that weave in and out each other. One strand is business, and you know what that is. That's, that is marketing and human resources and R&D and management and all those things you learn in business school. The other one, though, that's branding, and that's how the outside world sees you. All those activities. That's the view from the outside. Those two things are intertwined, but they have to be connected, like the little ladder in the DNA all the way up. If they're not, then you have a broken brand. You have this gap between what the company thinks it's doing and what the customers think the company is doing. And if they don't match up, eventually it's just going to collapse. They have to connect.
Right. No, that is so true. As we chatted about earlier, people really struggle with understanding the value of brand. I mean, really struggle, because a lot of them think it's the Nike swoosh or the McDonald arches or something like that. And in fact, it's really not. I'd love for you to describe, in your opinion, what brand means to you, but then also on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is brand for business?
Well, I think it's business is a 10, and so is branding. Those two things are equal. And if you don't consider them equal, you're going to have a struggle. I mean, businesses today really depend on their customers. I mean, more than ever. So no longer is branding just creating symbols and ad campaigns and then communicating those in sort of one-way communication like advertising to customers. It's more a two-way conversation. So you have to listen to what your customers are saying. And I think today it pays to actually invite them to run your company, essentially. I mean, they're not going to be making the day-to-day decisions, but you should be really listening to what they need, what they're going to need, supporting them, supporting their lives, making them into the kind of people they want to be. No matter what you're making, there's an opportunity to do that. So if you think about what do you want your customers to become, now you're starting from the right place, because it's all about them. It's about how they perceive you, what use they make of you. And you need to be useful, and you need to be uniquely useful, right? You don't want to be competing with anybody else. So you want to find that niche where you're supplying something that nobody else can supply or nobody else wants to supply, and there's enough growth in it to make it interesting for you. And it should be something you really care about. I mean, it shouldn't be something like, oh, if I go into that business, oh, look, dentists are making money, I'll become a dentist. Well, if you don't like teeth or people, let's say, I wouldn't become a dentist. It has to be something that is organic for you. And the same thing with companies. They need to have a sort of organic purpose in life. They have to be doing something that they would be doing even if they weren't making money. Mm-hmm. That's what your core purpose is as a business or as a person. What are you doing that you would be doing even if you couldn't make money at it?
Right. I have a very good friend who is a domain investor. So he's the guy who buys and sells .coms, because, as you know, they're rare now. So that's just this hot ticket. And he was kind enough to offer a tutorial inside Brand School. And he went on to share that when he sold his publishing company a while back, he made millions on that. And as part of that sale, the logo, the business name, and the .com were all part of the brand value. It actually had value.
Yeah,
and right. And you talk about that at length in the Brand Gap. I always look at statistics. So like according to Forbes right now, the most valuable brand is Apple. And they're valued at 170 billion. Remember in old days, it's followed by Google right now, but remember it used to be Coca-Cola and that's always a moving target. But in a different article, Forbes says that Lego is the most powerful brand, meaning it's the strongest, and they're looking at brand equity, which is, what brand of product would a consumer buy, and then brand input, which is how much a brand spends on marketing, and brand output is pricing and margins, obviously. And I have to say this because a lot of my students don't know the business vernacular. But my question to you is, how valuable for a small business owner? A lot of times naming is arbitrary, or they don't get the .com, or they, short themselves on the logo and they either do 99 designs or they have their cousin Sue do one in clip art or whatever. Mm-hmm. How valuable do you think your brand assets are in the grand scheme of things?
Well, I do think that the name itself for most companies is the most important brand element.
The name.
Because people can use that. They can just talk to each other about it. It also gets baked into a trademark. I mean, it's the one thing that you use over and over again. So it pays to get that into pretty good shape. And I would say for companies that start out with a bad name, it's never too late to change it, even though you think you're going to lose customers. Usually, with a little bit of investment, you can turn that around and make it into a positive. Like, we're changing our name because, you know, we're now better than before, and it gives you a chance to talk about it. So this assumes that your new name is better than your old one. But so if you go to my website, there's somewhere in there is an article about the 7 rules of naming, 7 things you need to accomplish.
Yes. I actually have that here, and I want to share it with the group too, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I won't go through the whole thing and bore everybody who's not interested in naming at this moment, but I think one of the things that is pretty universal, and this is the one that I think is the easiest to remember too, which is a name should not be more than 4 syllables. Simple, right? It's just mathematical. No more than 4. Why? Because if you just pay attention to what happens to longer names, if there's more than 4 syllables, people will figure out a way to shorten it, right? So international business machines, I don't know, 9 syllables, that never was going to fly. So IBM, 3 syllables. What's wrong with IBM? Well, nothing now, because they're huge and everybody knows IBM, what that is, but not everyone knows that it stands for International Business Machines, so that's kind of a waste. And they wasted the chance to have a cooler name than just 3 initials that nobody understands. Federal Express, 5 syllables, over the line, so people just called it FedEx. FedEx is pretty good. You know, they could have called it FedEx from the beginning, but so that one worked out. But that's what happens. So 4 syllables. So you just start out with a name that's 2, 3, 4 syllables. 2 and 3 syllables works good. Sometimes 1's okay. It can be a little bit short, but that's just a practical thing that, you know, why break that rule? There's just no reason. There's hardly any reason, unless you know how people are going to abbreviate it, and you're helping that happen. I mean, that can be a very interesting, clever tactic. It's like, we're going to have this long name that people are going to abbreviate, but we know how they're going to do it, and it's going to be even better, right? So if you're that clever, go ahead. But if you're not, like most of us, just do the four syllables or less.
And would you agree that it should have something to do with the business?
Well, I think it should be come organically right out of the purpose of the company, right? So the purpose is that one thing you're doing that you would do even if you weren't making money. Like, you know, I don't know what it is. Let's say JetBlue. So their idea is to give people business class comfort for the cost of coach. But the real idea is just to democratize a nice flight experience, right? So they don't want to like have people stuck in the back where they're uncomfortable and then the rich people on the front. They just hate that idea. So that's their sort of larger purpose, is let's treat everyone well, right? So they didn't really, JetBlue actually is probably not a good example because they struggled with the name. They didn't have the name. They had the concept for 10 years and the name just kind of popped up in the last second, but it's a pretty good name. It's like, you know, jet black is the saying, where they have jet blue and sort of blue sky and everything. And it's just simple, friendly, classy. It pretty much mirrors who they are. So that's a pretty good name. But names don't have to be descriptive. They shouldn't be descriptive. So there was a fad back when URLs just started. People thought, well, if I can get the name of the thing we're selling and nobody else can have it, I'll own that category, right? So pets.com, I own pets now, right? No, what happens is people just get confused. Pets.com, Petco, Pet, you know, all these names just sound the same. It just sounds very generic. A lot of times that descriptive name really should just be a descriptor. Like, that's your category. You don't use your category name in your proper name. It's just a name. My name is Marty. What does it mean? Who cares? It's my name. Some names have kind of, they indicate things like especially last names. There's an author called Francine Prose, an author. I mean, you got to wonder about some of these names. It's like, if you're named that, do you have to become a writer? I think you do.
Why waste it?
Yeah, why waste it? I think you're just like led into that, But so that could be okay. But I just think names can be descriptive. They can be like Apple. What does Apple mean? It's not a computer. It's just friendly. It's just different, and it's unique. So it works on that level. Names need to be unique. They need to be easy to spell. They can't be tricky, so people can't pronounce them or spell them. They should be appropriate for what the business is doing. They should differentiate themselves. They should sound like names. So when you hear it in a conversation, it's the name of a company, not just a generic word. So those are part of the 7 things. Also, it should be protectable. So it needs to be a .com. You need to have a trademark for it, which is a kind of patent that says only you can have this name. Mm-hmm. So those things are really important, and it makes the job very difficult because, there's people out there collecting names, and they'll sell them to you for $10,000. I have a few if anybody's interested. They're not selling off the shelf, I'm telling you. They've been sitting there for a long time.
That's awesome. Then, okay, so we've recognized that or identified that the name is your number 1 business asset. What about the logo? How much investment of time and resources should they put into it? And the reason I'm asking you that is because a lot of people create logos on the cheap or are appalled when you talk with a big agency. As a matter of fact, one of my agency mentors, they don't do logos under $50K. So there's a huge...
That's a huge difference. $50, $50K. I don't know.
Yeah.
So if you don't know anything about it, you'll go for the $50, right? I mean, that's what I do when I see 3 products and I don't know anything about how they work. I'll just get the cheapest one because it's safer. At least I've only lost $50 or whatever it is. But no. It's like wine, I mean, is a $50 bottle of wine better than a $5 bottle of wine? Usually. Is it 10 times as good? Probably not. But if it's important to have the right bottle of wine, you'll pay the $50, If you're trying to impress somebody or you really care about it a lot, you'll pay the $50. Otherwise, $5. But the problem with the $5 logo or the $50 logo is that it's probably not unique. There's somebody just churning these things out, and there's so many logos out there. What are the odds that it's going to be unique in any kind of way that's beautiful? The second thing is it's probably not going to be, it's probably not going to grow directly out of who you are and what you do. So that's where a real good firm can do that. They can make sure it's fairly unique. They can make sure it's right for the audience. They can make sure it has depth to it. Like on the surface, it's nice looking. It's also memorable. If you look deeper, it has some meaning. Maybe it borrows something from history. There could be that. Is that all worth it? Well, I don't know. But I do think companies get into trouble when they just throw out any kind of logo in the beginning, and then they become successful despite it, and then they're stuck with it, and then they have to change it, and it's going to be very costly. They probably should still change it, but there are logos like that limped on forever. I mean, Adobe Systems had the worst logo I've ever seen. It was really clunky letter A. It's ugly, and here they are, a design-related company, and typography is what they're selling, at least in the beginning, and they have an ugly logo. I mean, to me, that's like the worst offense. It's like if you're in a design business and your stuff isn't designed, that's just undermining who you are. You've got to have that. Other logos, like I think probably Nike, with the swoosh, there's nothing to that really from an aesthetics standpoint. It's okay. It's nice. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's pretty unique looking. Doesn't really mean very much, but they got it to mean something, right? It looks like speed, maybe. Looks like a blur, maybe. So good enough. It's unique, memorable. They were able to link it with their name. Fine, no problem.
Well, and they're able to use the swoosh in a variety of ways. Like it can render in variety of mediums. And I think, like, for example, the Harley Davidson logo, which is really complex,
it's really hard,
versus the Nike swoosh.
It's very limiting, that logo. Makes a great tattoo, but
it does. Why? Like, I did some research on that, and I found so many people who had tattooed that to their body. And I'm thinking, I wonder if they would have, if Harley Davidson would have had such a complex mark, had they known down the road, so many people would have put it on themselves.
I don't think they knew anything. I just think it grew organically out of who they are, and, the Hells Angels and all that kind of stuff they were kind of steeped in. But if their logo was the Nike logo, would people be tattooing that? I don't know, probably not. I think it needed to be more tribal. I mean, that's, Harley is a very good example of a tribal brand. It's really a group of people that have similar views. It's like a club. You don't buy a Harley, you join Harley. In a sense, you adopt their rules and everything. You just sign up for it. I was talking to a motorcycle enthusiast. He scratches his head and he says, "There's nothing magic about a Harley motorcycle. It's not that great. So just mechanically, it's been surpassed a million times. Kawasaki makes a motorcycle that's way better, but who's going to join that club, the Kawasaki club? I mean, only if you just really like beautifully modern machines. But there's no tribe built around Kawasaki compared to what Harley has. So Harley's more than the product. Obviously, it's an ethos, and if you like it, if you like thinking that you're being bad on the weekends, and you want to join that gang, go for it. People get a lot out of it. So brands are bigger than the product. They're bigger than the logo. They're a whole. I just use the word tribe because it's I can attach more meaning to that. If I say a brand community, that's kind of boring. So we call them tribes.
Can we talk a little bit about Coke and Pepsi, since we're on the logo thing? Because Coca-Cola has never changed their mark in the billion years they've been on the planet. But Pepsi looks like they've had an identity crisis like every decade. Why? Do you know any insight on why Pepsi can't figure things out? Or are they trying to keep up, or like what's happening?
Well, of course, they've been under the thumb of Coke forever, and they almost got out from under it in the 60s. They were pretty close to doing, they identified with the people in their 20s, basically their teens and 20s. And they said, this is the one for the youth. This is the alternative. And they did pretty well with that. And Coke was rebranded by Pepsi as the stodgy, old-fashioned one, right? So that worked pretty good for them, but they kind of lost their way. But they caused Coke a lot of problems, and Coke tried to reinvent itself as a result of competing with Pepsi. And so they had new Coke, and they introduced a bunch of products that really infuriated the traditionalists. So they learned, I think, not to do that. That's why they don't change their name, change their logo. I think they dropped it for a while and just went with the letters, Times Roman or whatever it is that just says Coke. They still have that, but it's the old one with the flourishes that is really memorable and cool looking. And they, in recent years, the last 10 years or so, they've just learned to really make great art with that. Because they got a good agency, basically, that figured it out with them.
Right. And can I ask, since we're kind of going down the this or that road, I've always been fascinated too between the breakfast wars of McDonald's and Taco Bell. Now, for me, I don't think, if I were on the Taco Bell team, I would basically say, I would start singing the Frost song, like let it go, let it go, because I just don't know if they're going to be able to steal McDonald's market share. Why do they fight online and in the media where they're duking it out with really,
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying?
It's a good question, and I think it's not very strategic. go head to head with anybody, especially if someone who's more entrenched. Why would you do that? You're going to lose, right? So it's always the same thing. Be different. And I don't mean a little bit different, be a lot different. So Taco Bell has a difference built in, Mexican food, a kind of Mexican food. I don't know if Mexicans agree that it's Mexican food, but it's unique. They should just do that, and I think they could get a certain amount of breakfast business with that, but I'm sure they have their reasons, they have their business needs, but I don't think they're looking at it from the point of view of customers. It's always about customers. Like, what do they need to make their lives better? How are you helping them? And battling it out with another brand doesn't help your customers necessarily.
No, right.
Sometimes you take on a bigger brand when you're not even close to their size. Okay, so you're saying you cast them as the 800-pound gorilla, and you're the alternative, the cool alternative. But that works when they're really big and you're small. If you're almost the same size, it doesn't pay to really go head to head unless you know you can win.
Right.
And that's certainly not going to happen in that case.
Well, and since we're talking about that, because you are right on. I mean, I think we're channeling here a lot of where I wanted to go with this. But in this book, which I also love, you say, don't just be different, be radically different. And you said it a couple of times, sort of. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, the reason I say that is because there's kind of strategic decay that happens in companies. They start out with a fairly pure idea, and then because of real life and because of the way people work together, it gets watered down over time. And so I have to keep telling people, no, be really ruthless, be hard on yourself, be the only in your category. And I mean only. And if you can't say that with any credibility or any meaning behind it, it's not about how you say it at that point. It's about who you are. You've got to change that, your position in the market to be something you can own, right? And keep that really strong and clear. Overdo it, because you know that over time it's going to get watered down as you start to grow and you realize you got to put out other products. Always keep pruning that back. Keep it very simple and severe.
Yeah. Well, and don't you in the brand flip, that's this one, mm-hmm. another winner. Don't you talk about the onlyness statement in here?
Yeah, I do. It's a staple of mine, because that, onlyness is really what Zag is about. So you got a whole book on that. But that principle is kind of the bedrock of branding. If you don't have an ownable position in the market, you can't build a brand. You need that. You need to have, here's what we own, and over here, these are our enemies. These are the people we're not, right? Now you've got a story happening for people. It's like, I picked this one because they're not like that one. And so you've got, this is who we are, and this is who we're not. And for the people that appreciate us, we're the only choice.
Yes, and I thought that I had bookmarked this, the actual how you fill it in, but I think what I'll do is I'll put it in there somewhere else, in our interview somewhere else. But it's basically our brand is the only blank that blanks, right?
That's it. So the first blank, our brand is the only blank. Fill in that blank with your category. Okay, Harley-Davidson. Our Harley-Davidson brand is the only motorcycle manufacturer.
Right.
You have to put in the category that your customers would identify you with.
Right.
Yeah,
here.
there it is. Right in the book. I knew I got that from someplace. So, so in the second category, I don't know. What do I say?
So basically how we articulate it is what, how, who, where, why, and when.
We call that the long onlyness. So that's
okay.
By using those 5 journalist questions, you can figure out where your onlyness is. Now, some of those things, like The where might not be important. The how might not be important.
Yeah.
But you look for it in there, and then you zero in on that one. So for Harley, it would be something like it's the only motorcycle manufacturer for people, mostly guys probably, that want to join a gang of cowboys.
Yes.
It's something like that. It's not anything about the motorcycle itself. There's something bigger in the case of, it's the gang. I want to join this gang.
Right. Well, and I just think that they're just amazing principles that aren't complicated. It's just, I think people have to slow down and take a look around. They have to be more of a chess player than a checker player.
Yeah, that's true. You have to look at things in 3 dimensions. You have to think things through. If we do this, what does that lead to? Because everything leads to something. So you have to be a systems thinker in a way. The principles are simple, but life is complicated. So life complicates these simple things. That's why you need to keep going back to these first principles. Like, after we've done this, can we look and say, now we're the only something that's important? And if we can't, we got to go back and fix that. Keep finding that difference. And it may change over time what that difference is, but we have to have that. Otherwise, we're starting to compete with everybody, and everybody's competing with us, and then we start lowering our price. Then we're not able to do any cool things anymore because we're not making enough money, and down it goes.
I'm seeing a lot of entrepreneurs following the gurus online, and I'm really questioning if the gurus are really as successful as they are claiming. You can make $1 million in 2 weeks, or whatever the case may be. And what these entrepreneurs do, are they're trying to copycat or emulate to, buy my formula, and you too can be a 7-figure earner. And so they're doing this copycat process. And what I keep telling people is, perceiving someone else's success is dangerous, because first of all, I'd love to see their tax return. Right?
Well, I would say as a rule, be suspicious of people who promise dollar amounts for anything. Like, if that's the carrot that they're holding out, you're going to make $1 million, or you can be like me, a millionaire. I mean, the question is always, well, if you're a millionaire, why do you bother to do this? It's a good question. And I think the reason is because they want to be a millionaire doing that exact thing by convincing you to go along with them. And anybody who says their process is trademarked or special in some way, I would really question that too. I wouldn't say that about anything that I've written. I think it's all common knowledge among people who know how to do this. But we all forget. We forget it, and we find it sometimes hard to keep it all together in our heads. So that's all my job is to make it simple for people, get it down to its simplest so you can remember it and act on it. And I think you're very capable of making it more complex, which is what's going to happen. But you have to start with something simple that you can actually understand, that makes sense with everything else you're doing. So that's my goal, is to keep simplifying it for people so they don't lose sight of the basic principles.
What about the importance of a big idea? So I have an entire lesson around how to uncover someone's big idea. How would you articulate the value of a big idea? Because when I talk about it, I swear to God, I get the deer in the headlights, right? Where people are like, what is a big idea? I have a widget. Like, oh my God.
Right. So big ideas can appear anywhere. They could be a product idea, a communication idea, anything really, a whole company idea. So you have to talk about, what kind of idea are you talking about? But a big idea is unique, for one thing. It's powerful in that it's probably going to disrupt an industry if it's really big. It's going to have outsized results like they're off the charts. It's not even worth measuring. I've seen that happen so many times in my career, just by not following a rule and just throwing away the rules and doing something different that makes sense. And then, for example, in certain kinds of advertising where it's just trying to get someone to buy something, you're expecting like a 2% return on your investment. Like 2% is really good if you're selling things in copy ads and stuff. This goes back to early advertising, but like 2% is really amazing. But if you do something in a different way, you might get 20%. I guess that would sort of relate to click-through rates and stuff. Like, oh, a good click-through rate for this is 20%. Well, I got 60 on mine, so what's that about? Well, I had a good idea. So good ideas is blast everybody else out of the water. And a good idea as a business, at the business level, is probably a disruptive idea. It's going to change the industry. Some people are going to be hurt by it, probably. Some companies are going to go out of business. You're going to take it over. You're going to change the playing field so that all those other companies are now obsolete. Mm-hmm. Happens all the time. Airbnb changed the playing field of hospitality. So those are like big ideas, and a big idea that doesn't necessarily work, but you're never going to create a huge business with a small idea, right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to always be looking for big ideas, and that's an art. I had books about that too, like the 46 Rules of Genius is all about the crafting of ideas and just doing artful work no matter what you're doing. You really be imaginative and artful. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so it's hard. What's a big idea? Well, it's one you haven't heard before, that's for sure. It has to surprise you. If it doesn't have surprise in it, then you know it's not a big idea.
Right. How important is packaging if somebody is selling a product?
It depends. I was big in packaging for about 10 years. I kind of led the niche of doing software packages for software that would be sold in stores. I don't know if you can remember that. Some people aren't old enough to remember that, but that's how it was sold. You didn't get it online. You went to a store and it was in a box. So you got a box with basically air, a little booklet, and a disk, and that was your software. So some software products, I learned, didn't matter how good the package was. Like Adobe software sold because people needed it. It was a utility they had to have. Other software had to compete more, elbow its way into the market. And so the packages were really important. So I think that's true in all categories. It's just more important. But in the supermarket category, I think packaging is really important. You've got 60,000 products competing for attention. The store is very cluttered. And still you see people designing packages with a lot of stuff on them, which just adds clutter to a cluttered background. So in those situations, you want to do something that's devastatingly simple. That's the only simple thing on the shelf, maybe with a white background and an object in the middle. It can be that dumb. But it's smart because it's not like anybody else's. Mm-hmm. There's always this tension between how can we be different so you stand out, but be the same enough so we look like we're part of that category and not some weird thing that doesn't even belong in that realm.
Yeah, it is a delicate dance, and I think that's why people who DIY it are so frustrated, because they don't have the base knowledge necessary to make some of these decisions.
Yeah. Well, the thing to remember with a package that has to sell a product is that the one reason why you should buy it should be very evident. It should be right on the front of the package. And it could be implied, like with food, you just show the food sometimes and it's just amazing. But you shouldn't have like 10 reasons to buy it on the front of the package. You should have one and put the other 9 reasons somewhere else, But get it down to that onlyness. It's the same thing. That's how I learned about this with packaging. There has to be an onlyness. We used to call it a why to buy message. Why do I buy this one instead of that one? Tell me fast, because I'm making my decision right now.
And that's funny you say that, because that's my next question. Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
He's the guy who said start with why, right? And he did the TED Talk, and I agree wholeheartedly with that you have to start with the why. You agree, yes?
Yeah, of course. To me, it seems self-evident.
I know, but it isn't, because so often people lead with feature.
Right. No.
Here's what we do. Here's, right?
Yeah. No, it has to be, why is this product good? Also from the company standpoint, why are we doing this? Mm-hmm. Why are we putting out this product? Mm-hmm. To me, that's a more important use of that word why is, why do we exist in this world? Why aren't we doing that? Why are we doing this?
And as a copywriter, how important is story? Because I'm hearing a lot of, and I've always believed that narrative is extremely important, especially in your absence, right? The person that should be doing the selling anyway. But
I
I
think
have
it's all about branding is all about stories. There's every company, every product has a kind of developing story, a never-ending story that keeps rolling along and being changed and so forth. I think, but as creative people, we have to be careful with this because we get excited when we hear, "Oh, it's about telling stories." I love to tell stories. We can tell them with pictures. We can tell them with words. Yes, but just remember not to slip back into the old advertising mold where you're telling the story and they're listening to it. You have to design the story elements so that your customers tell the stories. They make up the stories. It's all about them. Remember, it's what they say, it's not what you say. So give them the right materials, the characters, the plots, the events, whatever you need to give them, so they can put together a story that will benefit everyone, including you. Right? So don't tell them what to say. Don't just say, here's the script, here's who we are. Give them just a little bit and give them the elements so they can figure out the rest and take control of your story, because they're going to anyway. Mm-hmm. If you tell the story and they don't like the way you tell it, or they don't believe you, that's going to be the story. Right? They're going to start telling the story about you lied,
I can think of some recent examples of that.
Actually. I can think of some in politics right now, but that's not our topic.
So curious to know your thoughts on experiential marketing, because events are hot and we are so disconnected. We're so connected through the digital world, but we're marginally disconnected because everything's virtual, the in-person, the actual experience of something. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think we're all enamored with technology, and so we're going with it. We're going, this is really cool. I can be connected with people halfway around the world. I can form tribes with people that I would never have met, and we can all hang out together in a sense virtually. All that's good, but it's not everything. And we've kind of forgotten that what's really important is to be together with people, our family, our friends, people in our community. So I imagine it's going to settle out a little bit, and we're going to go back and learn what's important about each kind of relationship. I'm all for that, but I think that shows up in marketing, in retail, where your stores are needing to make the experience better. Okay, so for example, Amazon buying Whole Foods. People are immediately said, "Oh, it's going to wreck the whole experience. They're going to no cashiers, and you'll just walk out of the store with your stuff. It'll be just like a robot. Robots will run Whole Foods." Well, you of course you'd be upset if that happened. If you like Whole Foods, you wouldn't really want that to happen, and I don't think it's going to happen because of that. Who would want that? I mean, so what that's about really, what Amazon wants to do with it is got nothing to do with turning cashiers into robots. I think they want information on customers. They want to see how they can make the stores run better, more smoothly, more profitably. They may get rid of cashiers. I think that wouldn't be a bad thing, but they may substitute people in sections, like different food sections that are like departments where they're showing off the stuff they have. They're giving free samples. They're talking about recipes. They're having nice conversations. So you'll still have those kind of marketplace conversations with people. You just won't be in a cashier situation, which really those conversations aren't that amazing. Let's face it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
So, but it is nice to go into a produce section and I say, we just got this corn from Baja, Mexico. That's amazing. It's really sweet this time of year. And here's a cool recipe you could try it with. Have you ever tried it in risotto? It's here's this amazing recipe. You would go to that store because you'd want to.
It'd be like a farmer's market experience.
That's what they're trying to be. So I think you can do both. I think you can digitize some of this stuff, and you can also bring people back in to do other things. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if they think the same way, but they're smart, so I think they will.
Have you had any run-ins with confusingly similar? So I have taught on this, and I scare the pants off my clients when they, again, want to do the copycat thing, and there's a little bit too close to something that's already been trademarked, right? And I'm thinking, oh no, we can't do that because we're gonna get slapped with a cease and desist.
Yeah, well, that's what my book Zag is about. It's just saying there's no future in copying people. Yes, you can use best practices for some things, but not important things. Important things have to be uniquely yours. And it's the last thing you want to be is compared with somebody else, or seen as the same as something else. I mean, that's if two products are almost the same, how do they win against each other? Well, somebody's going to have to lower their prices, and probably both, and they'll just compete away all their profits. You don't want that. You want to have a niche that you can own with no competitors. I mean, that's the ideal. I don't have any competitors. My competitor is the old way of doing things, or my competitor is everybody else who can't do what I do. That's a much more profitable way to operate. So it's, but our human tendency is to copy people because that's how we learn. But, the pros fight that. They just don't do that.
No. How often should a small business owner audit their brand? Their brand and their brand assets and their website, all of the components that they utilize to sell their products and services. How often should they audit it?
I don't know if it's like you put it on a calendar. I think audits tend to happen when you start seeing things go wrong. And you go, geez, something's not working as well as it could. Our profit margins are shrinking, or we're getting more competitors. Let's take a look now and see if there's anything we could do better. But I think it can happen every 3 years or something, but it might be ongoing. I think you should be always looking at ways to improve it, but it shouldn't be change for change's sake. It should be, no, if we make this change, it's really going to give us a lot of bang for the buck. So let's do that, and change a couple other things with it, just a whole suite of things. But usually it's a response to competition or some change in the market.
Okay. Well, before we wrap, I only have a couple more questions because I had some students and viewers ask me if I would ask you. So may I ask their questions for them?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So Derek is one of our viewers, and he said, what makes 3-word slogans and taglines more powerful? And then he rattled off all these examples in 2 seconds, which was hilarious. Like a rock, I'm loving it, just do it, do the do, no more tears, taste the rainbow, breakfast of champions, kills bugs dead, makes mouths happy, where's the beef, good, it's Miller time. I laughed.
That's good. Well, that's somebody who's really observing, who's picking up on patterns.
Wow.
I think I can find some good ones that are 1, 2, 4 syllables or 4 words.
Okay. So there's no magic to the 3.
It's well, there is magic in 3s, but not necessarily in a phrase. There's magic when you have 3 things in a list. That's friends, Romans, and countrymen. It just sounds right. There's something that sounds truthful and factual when you have 3 things. But this is just 3 words in a sentence. I think taglines want to be short, but they don't want to be too short. I mean, HP had a pretty successful tagline. They just said invent. So, which is pretty cool because it's about them inventing, but it's also about their customers inventing. Invent a business, invent the future for yourself. So invent is a really good 1-word tagline. Nothing wrong with that. And some taglines are longer and they work too. But I think 3 is probably right in the middle, and it's probably pretty good. But I wouldn't aim for 3 and say, oh, I'm sorry, we can't use that when it's 4. No, but it's good. That's pretty smart of Derek to pick up on that.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so one of my brand school students, Elizabeth, asks, and she's an author, if you could do one thing as a new author or entrepreneur, what would it be? And what social media platforms are your favorite?
Well, that's a pretty open-ended question about being an author or writer because there's so many ways to write. Writing in itself makes no money. Like, to be a writer, even in an advertising agency. You can make some money in working on big accounts in an advertising agency as a writer, and it's a great craft to learn, but eventually you're going to say it's not enough money. Writing only makes sense when you apply it to something that makes money. Like
Okay.
if you're working on writing messaging for branding, you can make good money because it's tied in with strategy and some bigger things. And it does definitely take good writing skill. But you're really applying it to that. Or if you want to become a mystery author, you're not just writing, you're writing a product, you're a series of products that adds up to one big product. So Kinsey Malone stories, you know, A is for alibi, B is for burglar, and so forth. That was that was an investment in a product, right? I'm going to do the whole alphabet, and I'm going to do it well enough that people sign up for the whole thing. So that can work, but being a fiction author is wow, there's only like 0.1% of people that make a living doing that. It's even James Patterson, who supposedly makes the most right now writing books. He's doing 2 or 3 or 4 a year. He says, don't ever think you're going to make money doing this or make a living. Keep your day job. He, on the other hand, is like off the charts making money. But I think you can do it. Maybe that's you, but make sure you go in with your eyes open and know how you're going to do it. Right? Know that you're good enough and know how you're going to achieve that. So there's all kinds of writing. There's people that write long form ads, articles that end up being advertising. I don't really care for that myself. There's people that make sort of a living as journalists, but it's tough. So if you can figure out eventually sometime in your career how to apply that writing skill to something that is more valuable than writing, maybe starting a really cool magazine might work, but that's a really tough way to go too.
How about your social media platforms? What are your favorites?
I'm not very good at this. I'm still trying to figure it out, and I kind of get discouraged half the time. I think none of it is worth the effort. It seems like retail sales to me. It's just like, I'd rather give my books or whatever to a publisher and take a small percentage and go on to the next book and hope that one of them hits it big than just hand sell my book to everybody. It's just so much work, but I end up doing that. And so I'm not really, I think the people that are making money in social media are the platforms and not the people. I think we're all getting a little bit used as parts of a machine. We're the parts, and we think we're going to make money. And maybe if you're 20 and you make a few $1,000s, you think it's great, but when you're 40, it's not enough money. So either you start your own platform or just, I don't know. I think we have to solve this problem. I feel bad for musicians who can't make any money now, even though they're great. They just can't. It's just all getting given away. It's just music is given away. Artists, same thing. Authors, same thing. You can publish with Amazon, but if you're just a Kindle book, you're never going to make, very rarely does anybody like break out of that. And there are probably millions of people doing Kindle books now. It's just, it's not great. We're not in a great stage. It's exciting, but hard for anybody who's creating stuff. So we've got to figure that out. I always go back to what's your onlyness, What do you do that no one else can do? And is it valuable to people? So to students, I would say, they say, what should I do with my career, with my talents? I would say, just generally, because I can't prescribe anything for people. You have to figure it out for yourself. But just think of like 2 circles that are overlapping. You have a big circle. That's the world, and that's what the world needs at any given time. It's what the world values, what the world will pay for, and maybe doesn't have enough of. Think about all those things. Then think about, you're the smaller circle, and think about the things you love to do, the things you're good at, the things that you want to do, the things that will let you grow. Think about those, and think about where those things overlap with what the world needs. That's going to be your sweet spot for success. Because you might want to do some things that just aren't valued by the world, and I would say writing another romance book is not going to do it. The world doesn't need more romances. You may be able to do it in a better way, but that's something else. So think about what you want to do, but also what the world needs. And those two have to both be there. And that'll change over time. The world needs different things as the markets change, as times change, and you're going to need different things. As a person, you're going to need to try different things. And so you're always going to have to be checking back and saying, does the world need that still? Or what's it going to need next that I want to do? So don't go off and do things that nobody wants, and don't offer things that everybody else is already getting. Like they're getting plenty of that. And here's another one. It's just not going to get you very far.
Yeah, no, I agree. Last viewer question is from Andrea. How do you think 2018 will look like as far as branding and positioning for the future? Is there anything to do to prepare? Because things are moving so fast.
Things don't change that fast. Like in 1 year, not going to change that fast. I think we're, maybe in 10 years you see a difference. It changes very slowly. And I think social media has changed branding a little bit. It's just sort of emphasized a different part of it, which is, that you have to be different. You have to think about tribes, things like that. You have to think about two-way conversations instead of one-way conversations. So maybe that's happened in the last 20 years. I think it's more just learning how to do this. Everyone needs to learn how to do it if they want to be successful in business. And I think that'll be the change, is that more companies start to realize branding is half of their business and not just 10%. It's not something that a marketing guy can do off the side of his desk. It's a job on its own, and it's equal. It's a top level job, so it's right under the CEO level. In fact, the CEO can be that person, can be the brand person. Steve Jobs acted as that at Apple, right? He was the head of branding, so everything he did was about branding, building the products, talking about them, deciding what the company was going to do. That's all part of branding. And so you think, well, that's interesting. He's running the company and he's in charge of all this creativity. But I don't think that's really true. I think he ran branding and someone else ran the company. A group of people ran the company so that he could do what he does best. And he was the figurehead for the company and the visionary for the company, which is a great position to be in. But he had to fight for what he believed in inside his company every day. If you read his book, you find out how frustrating he found it, that people wouldn't follow him, that he had to sell every idea, every new innovation. He had to battle for it, and he's the CEO. So, nothing's easy. It's not easy working with a lot of people. But I think it helps if we're all on the same page and we know how it works. Then you've got something to build on. And in fact, for your students, I would recommend that they get a copy. It's $9, so yeah, I'll make $7 on it. So maybe I'm selling this to you, but it's a dictionary called Brand A to Z. And the idea is that this dictionary will give us all the same terms. So we're talking about the same thing and understanding the same principles. So it's just a little something you stick on your iPhone. It's an ebook on your iPhone, and you can link. All the definitions are linked to other definitions, so you can just kind of skip around and see what connects with what. And I think it's just perfect for people who are in branding, any kind of branding situation, because we've never had that before. So it took me 10 years to compile it. I was just doing it for myself, and I just threw it on an ebook and put it out there. So Brand A to Z.
That's great. And I only have one more question.
Okay.
So what's next?
It's the hard one. This is the hard one you've been saving.
I know. Like there's a lot of build up right now.
Okay.
What's next for you?
I've been writing more, just trying to write more books. So I used to write one every 3 years. I'm going to try to write one every year now because I have enough freedom to do that in between my consulting gigs. I'm very excited about the next book to come out. It's always the next book that you're excited about, but this one's a departure, and it's requiring me to do something I'd never done before, which is to write fiction. So I'm writing a series of 3 books that I'm calling business thrillers. So they have the mood, the tone, the pacing of a thriller, but they're teaching business, all the stuff in my other books really, and some new things too, about strategy, about branding, about culture. So those 3 books. First one's called Scramble, should come out next year. I'm looking for a publisher. So when that happens, it'll start to pick up speed. But it's just a fun way to learn, especially for students. I think it'll probably be, it's already kind of, there's people doing it. I'm not the first one, but I think I'm the first one in branding. And for me personally, it gives me a chance to grow in a direction that to try something I've never done before, which is write fiction. And I must say, I think it's going okay. It's not too bad. I've found my teachers, and I got the instruction I need to just have the basic principles. Which just proves you can learn anything that, as long as it's not too much of a departure from what you already know, you can learn something new. You just need a handful of principles and a good, inspiring teacher, and off you go. So I'm hoping that I'm helping you provide that to your students.
You are in spades, and thank you very much for your draft, because I am reading Scramble, the draft copy of it, and I'm so excited. And everybody, when it hits the market, you need to get it, because it is good. And I know, because I have the inside scoop.
Thanks, Kelly.
Marty, thank you so much for your time today.
You too, really enjoyed it, and hope that helps. Let's stay in touch.
I would love it. And for more information on Marty, please go to his website at martyneumeier.com.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll see you on the next Brand Chat interview series. Bye-bye. Want to learn more insider secrets on branding from the big name brands and learn how to make more money with your own brand? You'll find all of that and more inside my brand school. Just go to brandingformoolah.com and sign up.